Welcome to the SVG-TV news for Wednesday, September 23rd. I am Khalil Keita with the details. Minister of Health Luke Brown has said his ministry is doing the best it can to address the dengue fever outbreak in SVG, noting that 10 additional doctors and 6 nurses will be employed to boost manpower in tackling the mosquito-borne disease. Brown, who was absent from the ministry's news conference yesterday, said he has visited schools to keep abreast of what's taking place on the ground, and the stories related to him by teachers are heart-wrenching. The minister said that his ministry was alerted to the increase in dengue fever cases in July, and work started immediately to eliminate the disease. He said Cabinet also approved additional funds early this month to carry out nationwide work.
On September 9, 2020, Cabinet approved a $400,000 proposal by the Ministry of Health, Wellness and the Environment to carry out a project for the cleaning and clearing of rivers and streams with the objective of eliminating breeding sites for mosquitoes and thereby curbing the incidence of dengue. Incidentally, on the same day, we approved 65,000 face masks for students at our schools. Additionally, and again on the same day, Cabinet mandated the Ministry of Education to determine which drains and areas in the vicinity of schools need debushing and cleaning works to be carried out by the Ministry of Transport.
Minister Brown said there are currently 374 confirmed cases of dengue, which would mean that within the last 2 weeks, there were close to 70 new cases. The minister said that doctors would have been working around the clock at the Milton Cato Memorial Hospital as the spike in cases continues.
The Accident and Emergency Department of the Milton Cato Memorial Hospital has seen an increase in the demand for its services as a result of dengue. 50 cases in all showed up at the Accident and Emergency Department in August 2020. And this compares with 167 cases, of which 37 were children and 59 admitted for the month of September so far, as at the 20th of this month. 2 dengue deaths have been recorded, a middle-aged female and a 9-year-old male. We extend our condolences to the affected families. The distribution of dengue cases was also provided, and we saw that there is greatest prevalence among persons under 25 years old and in the Pembroke, Kingstown and Georgetown health districts.
The minister also acknowledged that more needs to be done on the ground in communities.
I agree with the sentiment that insect vector control officers need to increase their patrols in communities. We have to work together for the elimination of mosquito breeding sites. I heard Shamanti Laban of the Insect Vector Control Unit offer an interesting slogan at the technical forum yesterday. Without a drop, the cycle will stop. I have told you what the ministry is doing. However, I'd like to make the point that we shouldn't only be asking what the ministry is doing. You should also ask, what am I doing?
Parents and guardians are being urged to pay close attention to signs of dengue in their children, especially those who are unable to articulate how they are feeling. Consultant pediatrician assigned to the Milton Cato Memorial Hospital, Dr. Mishka Duncan Adams, said some of the symptoms to look out for in a small child, which could suggest dengue, are high fever, decreased appetite, being more irritable than usual.
So you may have a baby that is crying and is non-consolable as much as you try to console this child, and the appetite would have decreased. Another thing that they may have besides the high fevers and the irritability would be that rash. So that rash to the body, that is a maculopapular rash, is something that is also very characteristic of dengue. They may have joint pain. Smaller children, you may notice that they do not want to walk or lie on the ground because of the joint pain. They're very achy and may be noticed to have vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal distension, and bleeding, as Dr. Davey would have said before.
Dr. Duncan Adams further stressed the importance of keeping a child hydrated and to seek the intervention of a healthcare provider once the signs have manifested.
So we have our coconut water, we have our oral rehydration salts, you up on your fluids, and for smaller babies, increase your breastfeeding, okay? Keep the child hydrated. But we also have to not only monitor if this child is being hydrated by taking in fluids, because they're also losing fluids through fevers, through vomiting, through diarrhea. So you have to be very vigilant on their urine output. How much is this child actually urinating in a day? How many pamper changes are happening? If you notice that there is a decrease in the number of pampers, you need to seek a healthcare provider, and seek a healthcare provider in due time, not waste time, because children become very dehydrated at a quicker rate than adults. So that is something that is very important that I would like to transmit.
Noting that the treatment and management of dengue includes the use of pain and fever relief medication and staying hydrated, Dr. Duncan Adams said after a few days, a person with dengue usually recovers. However, in some cases, the situation becomes more severe and requires intense therapy.
Day 4 is a critical time, but even if your child is sick before day 4, for doing the dengue test for confirmation, it is still important that you seek a healthcare provider. So if you have a small child and child is not taking in sufficiently, not peeing sufficiently, you don't have to wait until you have a confirmation to do management. And that is something that is very important. You don't have to wait on the confirmation to start the management. The confirmation helps us in the long term for epidemiology, for long term looking at what we could expect. But at the end of the day, the management starts as soon as the person is ill. Okay? So hydration, fever relief, and
infectious disease specialist Dr. Jose Davies said most of the persons with dengue in SVG were identified as having type 3. She explained once someone has had prior exposure to dengue, that person is at risk of getting the more severe form of the disease.
Person A contracted type 1, let's say maybe 2-3 years ago. If type 1 is circulating again, more than likely if they get bitten, they would have a very mild form of the disease or not be sick at all. If type 3 comes around and they would have had one before, then these persons are more at risk for having a more severe form of the illness. So whatever you've not gotten before, if you get a second bout of another serotype, then there's a severe form of the disease. So we're not trying to blame any one subtype really, but it's your exposure, your previous exposure. And of course, if you have comorbidities, and then it depends on how much you hydrated. It's very hot these days, people get dehydrated, so there are lots of contributing factors.
Chief Medical Officer Dr. Simone Kieser-Beach said given the rise in dengue across the country, the Ministry of Health, Wellness and the Environment has recommended to the Ministry of Education that students be allowed to wear long pants and long-sleeved shirts at school to protect them from mosquito bites, especially the Aedes aegypti, which is the vector responsible for spreading dengue.
So that they would decrease the exposure, because this is something we are saying. So because if you have light colors, long sleeves, long pants, the mosquito can't bite you as easily. So this is something we are asking. Ms. Laban spoke about the insect repellents. We are talking about clearing the bush around your homes, clearing the bush around where you work. We all have a responsibility. And so wearing nets, using nets where you sleep. We have nets in the hospital too. So if we all work together, we can end this much sooner rather than later.
At yesterday's news conference, the CMO was asked to respond to views that the health authorities dropped the ball or had fallen asleep in the handling of the outbreak. She said this is not the case.
Oftentimes it seems as if interventions have to be, I might get licks for this, but anyhow, my back is broad, clobbered over the head before they pay attention. If you check all of our social media, all of our press releases, as Ms. Laban said, we've been in the field for months talking about dengue. We even developed a plan because we are looking at hurricanes, COVID, dengue. We have been out there giving messages. We have the SVG Help page on Facebook. I suggest that every Vincentian become very familiar with that page. There's a lot of information there. It's unfortunate that Vincentians think that we dropped the ball However, we will continue working because that's what we do in the Ministry of Health. We understand our role, but we understand that we can't do it without the public. And we will continue to try to engage the public so that we can all have a healthier life.
Stressing that there is just a short period between when a person who has contracted dengue goes from feeling not well to becoming very ill, the CMO encouraged everyone, including parents and guardians, to be very aggressive about seeking health care.
Right now, our institutions are very full. So the polyclinic in Bokama yesterday had 100 patients in one day. And this has been reported throughout the system. But we want persons to still seek care. Ask the question. And that is how we're going to respond together.
As word that the Caribbean Examinations Council, CXC, results of CSEC and CAPE exams have been received, the Ministry of Education has explained that the CXC is reviewing the results in specific subject disciplines. A release from the ministry says that as soon as CXC has completed this review, a more detailed report on the performance of students will be released. The ministry says today it received preliminary results of the August 2020 Caribbean Examination Council's Secondary Education Certificate Examinations, CSEC, and the Caribbean Proficiency, that should be the Caribbean Advanced Proficiency Examinations, CAPE. This year, 2,425 candidates were registered for the CSEC examinations, of which 856 were private candidates and 1,569 were school candidates. Some 572 students registered for the CAPE exams. Of this number, 37 were private and 535 of the candidates were from the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Community College. Today, the School for Children with Special Needs observed International Day of Sign Language under the theme, Sign Language is for Everyone. The International Day of Sign Language is observed annually on September 23rd to raise awareness about the importance of sign languages as a means of communication and in full realization of the human rights of people who are hearing impaired. Teachers and students were fully engaged in a range of activities as they observed the day, using the time to further raise awareness of the importance of the society to know the sign languages. Here's more from Nashika Davis.
Cindy Roberts, teacher for the hearing impaired at the School for Children with Special Needs, says that knowing sign language is very important so that persons will be able to communicate with the deaf or hearing impaired. And she thinks it will be quite beneficial if each person learns sign language.
Now this is a hearing wall, right? And when you just drop the deaf in it and you expect something to happen, but they can't understand what you are saying. Why? Their communication is sign language. So it's really good and it's a pleasure for this day to make the public aware of the deaf and the importance of incorporating them.
During an interview today, my cameraman and I got a crash course being taught how to spell our name and other words using sign language so we would be able to communicate with persons who are hearing impaired. A, B, A, V, I, S. Nashika Davis. Heidi McDowell, who is hearing impaired, communicated to us in sign language.
My name is Heidi McDowell. I am a deaf person and beautiful.
Teacher Cindy Roberts used the opportunity to point out that while someone may have little or no hearing, they should be treated like other human beings. She notes as well that the best way to learn sign language is by communicating with the hearing impaired by writing on papers so that they will read and then show what is written in sign. The special needs teacher says her colleagues from the school have been visiting other schools nearby as part of a week of activities raising awareness and teaching students how to use sign language.
We have gone around to our neighboring schools to make that public awareness. This morning we have 2 teachers that visited the Kingston Bishop College, Kingston, just to let the students know and be aware of what is happening in the deaf world.
Reporting for SVG-TV News, I am Nashika Davis.
Public servants here who are farmers will not be allowed to cash in on the $500 support to be distributed by the Ministry of Agriculture. So says Agriculture Minister Saboto Caesar. On radio this morning, he revealed that 4,129 applicants, that should be of the 4,129 applicants, 2,900 farmers will begin receiving payments from Friday.
Because we have to follow all of the accounting protocols, which is the norm, we will be making the payments, the first tranche of the payment, to the 2,900 farmers who met all the requirements. How would you know if you met the requirements? At each payment center, there will be an officer from the Ministry of Agriculture at a query desk. So when you go into, let's use for example, the Lauders Agro-Processing Center, when you walk into the gate of the Lauders Agro-Processing Center, there will be a query desk there, and you will go and look for your name. And they will have the names of all the persons who should be paid at the Lauders Agro-Processing Center. From
Caesar noted that while persons registered at more than 30 locations, 8 centers have been identified for payments, including Union Island.
We are going to make the payments at the following 8 centers: the Barrowley Community Center, the Kingston Geeshed, the Lacroix Palletization Center, the Lanley Park Palletization Center, the Lauders Agro-Processing Center, the Park Hill Community Center, the Rosebank Community Center, and the Union Island Revenue Office.
The Agriculture Minister said that it is hoped that all farmers benefit from the $12 million allocated by government, hence the reason they are carefully assessing persons.
It is a policy that we don't think that the Chief Agriculture Officer, who also does farming, should receive the $500 as a farmer. Because at the end of the day, we are here to see how many persons we can help. And by helping someone who already has a salary, it may mean that you're reducing the monies available to help someone who's doing farming only. And I want persons who are in the public service to note that as the Minister of Agriculture, I follow the statistics, and I know that significant production in agriculture is done by persons who are public servants. And I want to thank the public servants for the work that they continue to do. And I don't want anyone to be on a frolic and beside track.
The East Kingstown constituency of the Unity Labour Party, ULP, now has a campaign headquarters, which was formally opened on the weekend. The headquarters is also the office of the party's East Kingstown representative, Luke Brown, who said that campaigns will be coordinated and managed by his team from the Sign Hill building.
Open a constituency headquarters, a campaign headquarters, and you know very well that this is not the same as opening an office, because we had our office here for the longest time unbroken. Even though in East Kingston I do not get any support as a parliamentary representative for maintaining the office, but we kept the office open year in, year out for the duration of the 10 years that I have been here.
Brown remains optimistic that the work he put in over the past 10 years will pay off in a big win by a large margin.
A light which will not be hid. East Kingston is going to be a bright, shining example for all the constituencies in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. All the constituencies. In fact, I believe right now we probably are the best constituency office too. We have the best campaign headquarters. I have to be careful, you know, because Sir Louis still left to talk after me, so I know what you're going to say, but he confirming that East Kingston has the best campaign headquarters throughout St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Meanwhile, other ULP candidates and party stalwarts gave their full support to the East Kingstown candidate, who they say promises a bright future for the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
And when I stood here in 2015 and I introduced Luke Brown, I looked at his accomplishments, his achievements as a young man. And I then believed that no serious-minded Vincentian could turn their back on a young man with such great leadership skill.
The good book says that God calls young men because they are strong. And Luke is young, and Luke is very strong. Are you ready to make the difference? Luke Brown 2020 and beyond. Ladies and gentlemen, my brothers, my sisters, my friends, my neighbors, I require you to take action today to ensure that St. Vincent continues to fly its flag high, not only here in the Caribbean, but on the international stage.
And you heard the Prime Minister say, we're going from one generation to the next. And this is Luke's generation. This is Luke's time. I think Luke has been tried. I think you have put him through the fire. I think you have put him in the furnace. You have asked him to walk through on those coals for you.